Would I be the asshole for refusing to pack my husband's lunch? My husband, 35M, and I, 28F, have 2 beautiful children, 5M, 3F, and I am currently pregnant with my 3rd child. Recently, my mill has fallen onto hard times and lost her apartment. My husband invited her to live with us, which I wasn't originally happy about because with the little one on the way I wanted time to focus on our family, but I ultimately understood that it's a special circumstance. The problem is that Mill has really changed since she got here. We used to have a relatively good relationship, but she's increasingly been demanding and unreasonable. I know it's a hard time, so I've tried to be accommodating, but it's all getting to be too much. For example, she's been asking that we buy specific brands when getting groceries, which would be fine if they were just for her, but she's been insisting that the cereal brand we feed my kids isn't healthy and they have to eat a different brand. The one we buy is the one they like and it's not particularly unhealthy as far as cereals go. She's also been moving our furniture around, primarily the guest room that she's staying in, but recently she had my husband swap the couch and the armchair in the living room while I was out running errands. All this is fine, I love my husband and my mill and can understand what she's going through, so I can deal with it. It all finally came to a boiling point last night. My husband and I have been having a disagreement lately. Usually, my husband makes his own lunch to take with him to work. However, since I've recently quit my job to become a stay-at-home mom, he thinks I should start making his lunch along with the children's lunches. My husband goes to work an hour and a half before the children go to daycare. I currently wake up around the time he leaves for work and have plenty of time to get the kids ready and make their lunches. If I were to make his lunch, I would have to get up way earlier. We're at an impasse on this issue right now. Apparently, he complained to his mother about it, because she confronted me last night about being a bad wife. In her words, I'm not good enough for her son if I can't even make this one sacrifice to make him happy. Being confronted like this just made me so mad and I don't even know why. I snapped and yelled back at her and said some things I regret. Now my husband expects me to give my mill an apology and start packing his lunch, and neither of them are talking to me until then. My husband and I have never had problems like this before. He's always been so good to me. I'm worried that I'm overreacting and making an already difficult time even harder. I've never snapped like that before, but I just feel so overwhelmed and I don't have anyone in real life to talk to about this because my family doesn't understand my relationship with my husband and don't support us. Reddit, would I be the asshole if I held my ground? In Ta. A grown-ass man who can't even make his own lunch is pathetic. Not the asshole. It sounds like you need to get the mill out of your apartment ASAP. She's inserting herself into your business, disrupting your marriage, and making your husband even more selfish and inconsiderate than he was before. Not the asshole, however, it might be a good idea to have a talk where you clarify what exactly your job as homemaker entails. Otherwise, it is a risk that task will continue being pushed to you that you feel isn't your job. This needn't be more than just vocalizing your existing consensus. But if Mill continues whispering in ears, having had a frank conversation means you can go. We talked about it, and agreed that wasn't my job. Do you want to swap chores? Alternatively, I like, am I talking with you or your mother right now, as a response. Not the asshole. Mill has got to go. Your husband is an adult who, like many other adults, can make his own lunch. Your husband should be loyal to you, not his mother. Can he not see that she's now causing problems in your marriage? Do not apologize and do not start making his lunch. Not the asshole. It's interesting that your family do not support your relationship. Can I ask why? Have they witnessed something in your relationship that's concerning? I will say if you concede on this issue with Mill, there will be numerous others that they will tag team you in until you concede. Take care of you and your children and try to find someone that you can confide in. Would I be the asshole if I tell my ex to stop contacting my mom? So I, M23, was dating this girl, F23, for about a year and I broke it off a year ago. A bit of a background. We've met through mutual friends and lived in different countries. We decided we both don't want a long-distance relationship. She was studying, about a year in, but already decided that what she was studying was not for her. I offered her to move in with me. It only took a few months and she quit her studies, moved away from family and friends and moved in with me. That went well. However, I've noticed that my apartment was quite small for the both of us and I was not having enough time for myself. I told her this and she seemed okay about it and we decided it's best for her to move into an own apartment as I couldn't imagine living with her in mine the next few years. When she moved here, she started to get settled in, immigrating and such, and even attended a different college and continued her studies here. She then applied for a job which she got and was extremely happy about that. I've struggled with that a bunch as before that she had more time and took care of most of the household stuff as I was working and coming home exhausted. Now with her working, it was hard to keep the household stuff up, which bothered me a lot. It caused some conflict, and at some point I realized my feelings for her started to fade. After she got settled in her new job, she must have felt that I was being distant. We had a big talk about it after she came back from her home country. She was there getting an IUD, something we discussed a long time ago, and I tried to explain what the problem is, but I am actually not sure what started my feelings to fade. She thought it would get better once she moved out, so she tried to find a new place as quickly as possible and moved out of my place last year in March. I've realized that I am not able to have a relationship at the moment and ultimately broke up with her after she moved into her own apartment. She was devastated and the breakup overall was horrible. She cried a lot but was very strictly no contact with me, and I only reached out when I got letters addressed to her. Now last summer I met my now girlfriend Emma. She ironically lives in the country my ex is from, and we decided that I will move there this year. Something that's bothering me and Emma a lot is that my ex frequently has contact with my mom. My family offered to help her with immigration, especially my mom cause she's also from the country my ex is from. They go out to grab a coffee still, and my mom still helps her with any bureaucratic stuff that my ex struggles with. I thought about telling my ex to please stop contacting my mom, as I find it weird that they still have contact with each other now over a year after we broke it off. Would I be the asshole if I do that? Yes, you would be a major awe. She upped and moved to be closer to you. You wanted her to be your live-in cleaner, that's it. You don't sound as if you were the nicest to her. She left all her friends and family to move to another country that you had had an influence in, and then you left her. She would have had no support during that period of time that would have been hard enough. Your mom has offered her help and support. There's nothing wrong with that. Your mother is an adult and so is your ex. They are allowed to do whatever they like, whether you like it or not. Wait, so you wanted her to move out, so she did, but you still expected her to clean your place and cook for you? Lol. The audacity of men. You are the asshole. It's laughable that you think, after all you've done and put your ex through, that you can tell them to stop speaking to each other. Time to mature. Okay, when you immigrate to your current GF's country, will you be the immigrant boyfriend cleaning her house? Asking as an immigrant wife, because my husband and I share chores, but the immigrant in me is waking up and realizing cleaning is an immigrant person's job. You are the asshole. You are not in charge of your mother's social schedule. You do not get to dictate who your mother spends time with. Also, you were incredibly shitty to your last girlfriend. Am I the asshole for telling my stepdad I don't want his last name? This discussion happened 2 weeks ago. My stepdad brought up to me, 16 female, that we could change my last name to his, if I wanted to have the family name instead of being the odd one out in the house. He also told me he would love to share his last name with me, and I might not be his daughter by blood, but he always considered me his daughter. I told him I didn't want to change my last name, but thanks for the offer. He said we could have the same last name though, and I told him I didn't want his last name, that I loved my own last name and wanted to keep it. The story of our relationship is as follows. My parents were divorced by the time I was 1 and my older sister was 8. My mom met and married my stepdad within 18 months. She and my dad shared custody of my sister and me. My stepdad came into the marriage with no children and had 3 boys with my mom, no girls. My sister was older and never saw him as more than mom's husband. He did try, but I think he realized early on that she had decided what they were and never pushed. He was more invested in trying to become a second dad to me. There were many times he was me uncomfortable once I was old enough to realize what was going on, from the age of 5 pretty much. My dad died 4 years ago. The last year of his life he spiraled after my grandparents, his parents, died in a car crash, and then my uncle died overseas within weeks of each other. He turned to drugs and he died within a year. My sister and I were devastated. We both adored our dad and our paternal family, and we lost all of them within a year of each other. My sister got married last year and asked me to walk her down the aisle and dance with her. He also felt slighted that he was just listed as mom's husband and not a parent in the digital book thing she supplied everyone with. I think all of this has led to the moment. He and mom both expected my sister and I to see our dad way differently after he turned to drugs, and especially when he died because of them. But he was still my dad, and regardless of that last year, he's our only dad and was a great dad to us in the years before that, and I believe he still loved us both. My stepdad didn't like how I turned down his offer. He told my mom about the offer and what I said. Both of them sat me down and said I was too dismissive of his feelings and that I should have given it some more consideration. He told me he's here and he loves me and he wants to feel like he won't be pushed aside for the rest of his life by me. My mom said I might love my dad, but the way he turned out that last year, I should see that he wasn't perfect and be more willing to meet my stepdad for a more enriching relationship. Am I the asshole? Also yes, I am in therapy. My stepdad didn't like how I turned down his offer. He told my mom about the offer and what I said. Both of them sat me down and said I was too dismissive of his feelings and that I should have given it some more consideration. So, you deciding you want your last name to stay the same as being dismissive. But them not accepting your answer, is not being dismissive? Why do they get to be dismissive of your feelings and your choices? Not the asshole. Not the asshole. You're old enough to decide whether you want to change your last name or not. And having a more enriching relationship with your stepfather doesn't depend on whether you take his last name. You can change it and still be distant, or you could keep your own and become the best of friends. His last name has nothing to do with your relationship. Not the asshole. You have every right to want to keep the name you've had for 16 years and to have the connection with your bio dad. It doesn't sound like you dislike your stepdad and you aren't trying to dismiss his feelings. I can see why he'd be upset, but it's not your responsibility to control how he feels. Not the asshole. It's emotional manipulation by them to attempt to guilt you into this. They claim that you were dismissive of your stepfather feelings, yet he and your mom are every bit as guilty of dismissing your feelings. Not the asshole. You can appreciate the offer, but in no way should you be forced to take the name if you don't want to. Am I the asshole for not giving my grandmother's inheritance to my sister? My 47 male grandma recently passed away. In her will she set aside $50,000 each for my sister Tanya, 40 female, and myself. Tanya and I grew up well off, never had to pay for our education. Tanya is now married with 2 children, Ella, 5 female, and Jake, 1 male. They own a house. Her husband has a well-paying job. Tanya is currently at home caring for her son. I have tried my best to make it on my own. I took on debt and worked throughout school to pay for my expenses outside of tuition. I built a business and am now retired. I have no interest in my grandma's inheritance nor in the future, my parents' assets. I have promised myself not to perpetuate generational wealth. In 2009 my grandma gifted Tanya $50,000 for a down payment on her condo. In 2021 I bought my first car and my grandma promptly offered me $50,000. It had always been her desire to make things even. My parents pleaded with me to accept the money as my grandma was in her last years and this would bring her immense joy. After receiving the $50,000 for the car I promptly donated it, without telling my grandma. A few weeks later Tanya asked what I did with grandma's money and I told her the truth. She mentioned I could have set up a fund for Ella. I replied that I would always be there to support Ella and that giving away the money has no bearing on that. Tanya seemed a little miffed, but that's all. My wife and I took care of Ella 2 days per week during the pandemic. I have invited Tanya and her family on vacation twice since Ella was born to spend quality time with them. Ella and Jake could not possibly ask for a better environment. They have loving parents and all the emotional and financial support they will ever need. Fast forward to this Easter. My mom calls Tanya and I into the den and presents us with Grandma's will. Tanya and I will each be receiving $50,000. Tanya immediately turns to me and asks, "Are you going to keep the money?" I reply, "No." Tanya then asks, "Will you sign it over to me?" I again reply, "No." Finally Tanya asks, "Will you at least use the money to set up a fund for Ella and Jake?" Again I reply, "No," and proceed to reiterate that I will always be there for my nibblings, for anything they will ever need. In contrast to the car money conversation, Tanya now proceeds to break down. She talks about how she works so hard, and she does, both at her previous job and currently as a full-time parent, and how she is not rich like me. She calls me selfish and says Grandma would have wanted the money to stay in the family. She then storms off into the kitchen and starts ripping into my wife, who did not grow up privileged. "How can you forget where you came from?" My wife is shaken. I feel like shit. Tanya and I didn't speak again the rest of the evening. She was too enraged to have a conversation and try to hash things out. She feels like I would rather give the money to random charities than help out her family purely out of principle, thus making me the asshole. Regardless of a whole status, you could do something to help Ella and Jake have it a bit easier and you won't. I suspect you will no longer have family connections. I know if I were in the same situation our connection would be done forever. If that is something you are good with, then stick with your plan. It's mind-blowing to me people have money like this and don't want it. My IVF costs are killing me and seeing other people just toss their money is so strange to me. Kinda you are the asshole. While it is your choice to do what you will to the money, assuming you really wanted to help people in need, supposedly family is where you look at. This feels more like a, look at me, I'm donating this to charity, 'cause I can afford to, moment more so than donating out of the goodness of your heart. Not the asshole. Your sister is for verbally attacking your wife. I understand her frustration, but it's your inheritance to do with as you wish. Not the asshole. You can do what you want with your money. I do think you sound a little holier than thou, but that's not what you're asking about. Your sister had no right to try to demean and embarrass and guilt your wife. For that reason alone, I wouldn't give her the money, to be honest. If your grandmother wanted her to have it, she would have given it to her. Your grandmother wanted you both to be treated equally. From the sound of it, she never said what she wanted you to do with the money. Only that you both received equal portions. It is rare to find a family that is generally that disdainful of charitable contributions, but this is where we are. You do you. And your sister owes your wife an apology.